Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you, and with us today is director Peter Medak, as you know, and he had directed 2 episodes of season 2 of Space 1999, the first being Space Warp, and the second being the Seance Spectre. So please give Mr. Peter Medak a round of applause. So Peter, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, and it's kind of strange to be here and to see some of the wonderful actors who were there at the time, which is really 50 years ago, which is a long time. And it's just nice because one really remembers. It's not that because one hasn't thought about Space 99. I did because I sometimes bumped into Martin Landau and Barbara, you know, in various, God knows, years later, 30, 40 years later.
Get here.
You know. Oh, you can't hear? Maybe it's a good thing you didn't hear any of it. But anyhow, it was lovely to do space at the time. I remember that. And most of it I don't remember, unfortunately, because 50 years is a long time, and fortunately I did many things after that, you know, and my life took over, you know, and I worked on like 28 films, and I want to say hundreds of television, but some episodes of all kinds, and everybody was saying to me after Ruling Class, which I did with Peter O2, which was my 3rd feature film, he said, "You crazy, why are you doing television?" And I said, because between movies, I love to do that, because you meet new actors you would have never met. And then later on in my career, I used quite a lot of them. And so that's why it was important to do it. And nothing is a waste of time, really. And everything has its reason.
The microphone kicked out.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Try again. There we go. Sorry about that. It just went off.
So I said it's important whether you're a director or an actor. I think it's gone off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We got a backup. There we go.
Yeah. Anyhow, so I was saying it's very important to do, or was very important to, for me, after my career took over in a very big way, when I did some...
Yeah, you just got to bring it a little closer. I'm sorry.
Hello.
Sorry.
Okay. So you haven't heard any of that then? No? Okay. So I said it was very important for me to do all kinds of things, and it didn't matter that suddenly my career took off after my very first film, which was Negatives, and with this unknown actress, Glenda Jackson, in it. And she became a big star. And but Glenda and I stayed in touch through both of our lives until she passed away, and she was an incredible lady and an incredible actress. But going back to space, 1999, I loved it because it's something which I wasn't familiar with, and it was great to get to know all the whole space stuff, and the models, and all the actors who were wonderful, And I just saw Nick Tate, who of course I haven't seen since then. And I bumped into quite a lot to Martin Landau and Barbara Bain over the years. But time just flies, and it's a long time ago, and it's strange for me to be here today because it brings back so many memories, not really about the story, but about the people and about the actors and the actresses, and that thing never goes away because you never forget that. But the stories of what was my 2 episodes about, I can't really remember anymore. But I think it's excusable after 50 years.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. I have to say, though, in the Seance Spectre, that episode had actor Ken Hutchinson.
Yes.
He was a part of that episode. Your direction, I've always commented about it to fans and friends, that I loved the way you set up the photography, the director of photography, because we got to experience so many different types of camera angles and perspectives that we really would never see by other directors. And your creativity really shined, especially in that episode. It did in Space Warp, but even more so because you would film almost like an aerial view of the Eagle. You're looking down the way you were almost like shooting from the rafters. And then also just having the camera positioned in certain ways, and it was just very creative. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, I always had a kind of a mania about shooting, not for the sake of being different, but I mean, it's a vision, and you don't think of it. It comes to you, and it was very important. I always rehearsed the scenes, and during the rehearsal, which was very quick, I decided how to shoot it, and where to be, and it had to do organically with the story of what dictates your angles and what you want to show and what is important to see. And it's I love filming, and I loved filming. I mean, I'm now 88 years old, so but I'm not giving up, and I'm gonna do it yet again one of these days, and working on things which is all to do with my past. In Hungary, from my first memory to when I went to England, and about the whole, because that's where I grew up in the film world, and I was fortunate enough to meet. I got there at the best times, which was the early 60s, and then eventually I went to America when I was hired and put on the contract to Universal, and then later on to Paramount. And I just was lucky enough to get to England and also to get to America, to LA, which I loved and still love as a place. And it was both places, the good old days, just before they were gone. So I had fortunate enough to get to know and worked with all kinds of wonderful people in England, and also later on in Hollywood, you know. And I was very lucky.
Do you have a favorite, out of the movies that you've done, what would you say is, do you have a favorite that you filmed?
Well, it's not really, because it's like your children, you know, and you loved it all and love it all.
Sure.
Because of the actors who I was fortunate enough to work with. And those relationships, whether they're alive or not, still today, goes on forever.
Right. No, I understand.
Yeah. And it stays like that from both sides, from my side and then from the actor's side, you know, because when you directing great actors, it's you walking inside the guts of each other, and you own each other, and you know each other, and you don't have to.
The mic went again, I'm sorry. Oh, the battery's going. I apologize. Oh.
It's gone off again.
Another mic.
Here we go. We have a backup.
Yeah. So the relationship between an actor and a director.
Oh, you can do a little closer.
The relationship between the actors and the actor I worked with in my various movies or in television too is just absolutely magical, because you are walking in each other's inside, and
It's a connection.
it's
like,
a connection,
Yeah.
and you don't, and their performances and what I do with them just build on that, in this trust with each other, and it's eternal, it's forever, you know, and you know, when I worked with Gerry Oldman, when I did Romeo's Bleeding, you know, we knew each other before, but that's why the film had happened, and because we wanted to work together. And it lasts, I want to say it's lasted, not lasted because it still lasts. Today, years later, and that will never go away, and it is not just with Gerry, but with every actor, because I love actors and actresses very much, and they know it immediately, and they trust you with everything they got. And it's like handed to me in a golden plate, and it takes. I was just having lunch with Rufus Cyril yesterday, and Rufy was saying, he said, you know, you love actors so much, And it just shows in your work because we all trusted you and trust you with everything. And it is, when I worked with George C. Scott on The Changeling, you know, everybody told me that George is very difficult as an actor and it's not going to be easy to direct him or you. And it took me about 2 days when we started shooting to absolutely conquer him, you know. And from that point on, I could do anything with him, you know.
He trusted you. Right?
Trusted me, and he used to call me my crazy Hungarian, you know, when he came on the movie set, wherever we were shooting, and he couldn't find me. He said, "Where is my crazy fucking Hungarian?" You know. And I just love George. God, it's very difficult to say he is the best actor I ever worked with, and there isn't a best because, again, as I said, it is like your kids, you know, because as long as you love them, and which doesn't mean that they can do anything they want to do, because I just say, no, don't do it like that, George, I don't want that, you know, and so what do you want? What do you want? You know, and they're magical actors because they just able to do
Well, again, you're
that I couldn't do myself, you know. And they are magic because they always turn out with something which is better than you ever thought it's gonna be.
That was a wonderful movie too, The Changeling.
Yeah. I'm very proud of it because I always loved supernatural, and I particularly loved The Changeling because it was a real, supposedly true story, but I just made it my own, and I had a great time doing that film, and it was a piece of cake for me to do it. And it still goes on today, after God knows how many years later, probably 40 years ago, you know. And it's just magic, and magic sometimes for me to watch when I'm asked to go to a screening and talk about it. But it was a magical time. But then it goes for some of my other movies as well, which I love making so much. And very few films out of the 20X or 8 or 25 movies I made that I didn't love making. And there may have been one or two which I was disappointed myself with, you know. And it's always because I wasn't allowed to do what I wanted to do. And there was tremendous interference from the studio or from those producers. But it's not a bad average, 2 out of 20X movies. And they were a joy and a pleasure for me to make them, and I dream about them, and I often dream about Peter O'Toole, you know, who's passed away quite a few years ago, and that I'm directing him and working with him, and when I wake up from the dream, it's a pleasure, you know, because we spent more time together again, which was great.
It's very impactful. It had a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
Excuse me for one moment. Warren, did you have a quick announcement?
I do, and I'm really, really sorry for interrupting. Just really quick, anybody with photo ops in here?
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna start lining up fairly quickly. We'll try and get you back here as soon as we can, and really, really sorry again for interrupting, okay? Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
And,
Sorry about that.
Yeah, but anyhow, I love directing.
Now, how did, in regards to directing, and did you know from a very young age that you wanted to be a director?
I did, yeah. I did at a very early age. And I had an amazing aunt who was a very famous soprano, not in Hungary. I was living in Hungary still at the time, but in the West, you know, in Prague, in Vienna, in London, in America, at the Met and all that. And she gave me for my birthday, I mean, it's such a long ago, you know, and I keep thinking it was for my 7th or 8th birthday, a 35mm film projector and a piece of film. And my memory says that I used to close all the windows and project that film, which I did. But I can't believe, because I know what a 35mm projector is. And it's not what you give as an easy birthday present. And but anyhow, that's how I remember it. And from that point on, I wanted to direct. And I did everything wherever life threw me. Through the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 to London, and when I got to London, I immediately entered the film business, again through my Seymour's help, who was living in London then. And I went through every department in a matter of 3 years in films, and that's how I never went to film school, and I learned it just that if you didn't do good in this job, you wouldn't go into the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
So it was very hands-on.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the way up, I worked with the most amazing actors in England. And whether it was Trevor Howard or whoever, you know. And I worked with the best, or was connected to the best. And but it only came from my own obsession and lovingness of directing, you know. And anyhow, but it was very important, and after 3 years I was ready to fly, and it's been the same ever since, whether it was Ruling Class or The Changeling or The Craze or Romeo's Bleeding or whichever movies, you know. And rehearsing was very important to me, and because that's how, and that's when I figured out of what everybody else of the cast is looking for in those scenes. And I learned, I mean, my first movie, as I said, I did with Glenda Jackson, who became a huge star later on and passed away recently. And I allowed Glenda, without her knowing it, to teach me about every scene in negatives of what it should be like, and I didn't steal from her, but it was magic, and she didn't notice any of it, but
So it sounds like it was a wonderful learning experience.
amazing, yeah. But I mean, it was a proper movie, and it really launched her film career, that film. And she did my career,
Yeah.
And that relationship and trust and love of each other's mentality lasted forever.
Well, it's almost, and I've heard this said especially with filmmaking and in particular, it's almost like a symbiotic relationship between the actor and the director, because if you're tapping into that and it's almost like an unspoken type of communication that comes through, and then a lot of times a director can really pull the work and creativity out of the actor.
Absolutely. And I did it, I did it with every actor and every actress I'd worked with, whether it was Lena Olin or George C. Scott or Gerry or the Grace, Gary Camp and Martin Camp, and I don't know, you just find that line into each other's soul, and you hardly have to speak, and at one time I was fortunate enough when I was an assistant director years before in England to work with David Lean, and he hardly ever said anything to the actors except always smoking a cigarette. And he smoked it like that, and Peter smoked it like that, not like this. And it's just what I learned from David's silence, and getting his way absolutely when you've seen any of his movies, because they were just magic, and you connect into each other's soul, and you just, it's magic, that's all.
Do you find that because obviously with the film, it's going to be, there's more days for the production, then it could maybe even go months, but with an episodic television show like Space 1999, I'll use Space 1999 as an example, you only have X amount of days, maybe you have like 5 or 7 days to shoot. So would you have rehearsals even with a television series too?
For me, if I can't rehearse, I won't shoot, And a lot of producers objected to it, and I said, oh, fuck off, and leave me alone, And it's terribly important, because in the rehearsals, or the read-through of the script, or the actors really just open themselves and see what they see in that piece of material, And it's a kind of a learning journey. And in television, again, fortunately, I was able to work on some great television in America, and with actors I didn't know before, and then in 2 seconds you establish yourself, your mind, and what you want in the rehearsals, and I don't know if you remember those TV shows of Hannibal with Mads Mikkelsen, a giant of an actor, and it was just, it's fantastic, because it's all raw new talent for me, and you have to conquer them without them knowing it, in 2 seconds because there's no time.
Right.
Otherwise, So it's just as creative as making a movie where you shoot for 2-3 months, or an episode which in America it's about 10 days, and everybody is on your ass, to go faster and faster and faster.
Right.
And how do you cope with that and still get your own way, and it's terribly important, because if I don't get my way, I'm not interested, and I would never work with those people again.
Well, it's your vision.
Yeah,
Your vision that you're
it's
creating.
your vision, and it goes to where you put that camera and what you do with that camera, because the camera is the one which actually captures all of your listening, and how you do that, and how you find the little pieces to show every aspect of what is going on in that scene. And it is magic. And sometimes I see a movie, or I walk onto a film set, and the camera, which is, to me, was like a god piece of equipment, it just sits in the film set without moving. And it's an absolute crime of a director if he doesn't know how to move that camera and when to move it, and doesn't know about the lenses, what a 50 lens does, what a 9.8 and 9.8 lens does, or because it's terribly important, and it's like cutting your arms off. And I sometimes felt really sorry, and because I went to visit an actor, and I couldn't stand it, and that poor camera is just standing without being part of it.
Well, like I was saying earlier, and I'll use the example again, because with that one specific Space 1999 episode, and again, it's the one with Ken Hutchinson,
Yeah.
Where you had different angles photographed, and even with the character of Sanderson, who Ken Hutchinson was playing, I mean, he was bigger than life. I mean, he was exaggerated, but he was almost tormented. Just with the different angles that you were capturing him, and just the way you were trying to perceive, the camera was actually adding to that, his performance. And it really comes through with that so much. And it's tying into what you're saying, and it's just wonderful to hear.
Yeah. And even on the Changeling, because that was a ghost story, a supernatural ghost story. And I believed and believe in ghosts, which doesn't mean much, except that I was very connected and affected by it, And in the Changeling, from the very first frame of the very first frame, I started shooting from above, looking down, and it was the ghost's point of view,
It made you believe that much more.
Absolutely. And it's very difficult to shoot ghosts, because, and you can't show a ghost, because once you do it, it's out the window, because you've shown everything. And a supernatural film is all about how you tease that audience, and how you don't give it all away, or when you do, you know exactly, and you're driving towards it, And the Changeling is an incredible example of it, and I always wanted to do more, but I never found a good enough script. to do it with, and I'm always dreaming about it because, and just the other day I was half asleep and I suddenly said to myself, what I saw, he said that's how you got to show a ghost. And I just saw because I was half asleep. And I just saw this image, which wasn't a clear image, but it was slightly, not that distorted, but you couldn't quite see, but you could see everything. And if I ever do another movie, which is supernatural, I know exactly how to shoot a ghost. And
It's like you have the imagery all set up in your mind of how you want to project it.
yeah, because you know what to do and how to do it and how to kind of go like that. Not with your hand, but just with lighting and lights. That it is not 100% clear. And it's a ghost, and I have seen ghosts, you know, absolutely. And you can't be scared of it. You mustn't be, particularly if you are directing a movie, because you have to allow it to come in, you know. And it's there and it isn't there, you know, in 1 second.
It's almost like
And
a
you
limbo
say,
state.
yeah, did I see something here? And it's always here, it's never here. And when you see another supernatural and the ghost is forget it, you know. But if it's here, you turn that way, and it's gone. And you turn this way, and suddenly something is there, not the same thing. That's when you realize, listen, there is a presence out there, definitely. And don't deny it, work with it, because that's the real thing. And in the changeling, I had throughout that feeling, and but I wasn't aware of this, not completely seeing it, but I know how to do that now. Because once you see something, you know, you've seen it forever, you know.
That impression is there.
Yeah, it never goes away, you know. And but you do see things in your mind, and when you turn your head, you wasn't sure, did I actually really see what I remember that I saw a second ago? And again you turn that way or this way, or you just look and it's not there anymore. And then suddenly something happens somewhere and you hear a door opening or closing, and the door is still open. So what was it? You know, it's stuff like that, and it's slight. The slightest it is, the better, and the more specific it is, forget it.
And I think all of us on some level have experienced something like that. Sometimes we'll catch ourselves and we'll think, wow, did that really happen? And then sometimes we'll dismiss it. I'm going to open it up to questions.
I was just going to comment. One of the people in the changing, I think, was Barry Morse. Do you have any memories?
Darling, you have to just
I'll
speak louder
yeah.
because my hearing is terrible.
I'll repeat the
What is
question.
that?
She was asking, Isabel was asking about working with Barry Morse in The Changeling.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because he did Space 1999 in the first
Yes.
season of Space. And if you had
Yeah.
any recollections of working with Barry Morse, or remember working with him in The Changeling, that
Yeah.
stands out.
But in the Changeling, which part Barry played? I mean, I remember him very well, but...
Parapsychologist.
He was a parapsychologist in the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember, of course. Again, I just remember rehearsing with Barry, you know, and doing it, and I loved him, but then I loved him because of having worked with him on television. So I knew him, so when that part came up, I said, because we were shooting in Canada, and some of the cast had to be Canadian, you know, and Barry was Canadian, you know, and then...
There was another actor in that movie that was Canadian, John Colicos.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love John, yeah, loved him, yes, fabulous.
He did a lot of different work.
Yeah, he's the one when, wasn't he the one in the Changeling when George Scott, you know, so that the Holocaust was in, I'm trying to think which part he played, but he was in this car which crashes and he dies in it and the blood is coming down his face. I think that was Barry. I mean, Holocaust, John Holocaust. And, but those are wonderful things, you know.
You had a question? Sorry.
Two questions. Going back to the different types of shots that you did in Space 1999, you know, the camera up above in the cockpit. When you were given a script, did you automatically get the freedom ahead of time to do what you wanted? Or did you go through the script and go, let me go to the producer, get that, what I want to do, okayed?
Yeah, but what is the basis of your question?
When you're given a script,
Yeah,
the different shots that you do,
yeah.
you're basically given the freedom, even if they're kind of outside the box, because you got a shot in Space 1999, which is
From the
looking down at you.
But
And that's out of ordinary, and I was just wondering whether or not you would have to get, maybe let me run that by somebody.
no, I mean, what happens that when you read a script, whether it's television or films, you make those choices in your mind, you know, and I mean, when I read a script, it's automatic, and it's not like I'm sitting there saying,
Like you're saying,
how am I going to shoot this? It comes to you, it's an instinct, you know, and you just do that, you know, and all the great ones, you know, and again, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Hitchcock years ago at Universal, you know, and seriously, some of the great directors never spend a long time trying to explain what they want, because I myself had been able to get the actors there without saying anything, because you are completely and totally linked into each other. And it's whether it's auto-suggestion or what it is, I don't know. But I sometimes, in the middle of shooting, and I say to myself, oh my God, if he would lift his hand at that point and do X, you know, and suddenly he's doing it without saying anything, you know. And it's that kind of stuff. But I always had a mania about shooting unusual angles, not to be different, but because if it had
It really adds to the.
it adds to it, and I'm looking at this glass of water and that cup of coffee, And it's quite easy suddenly to make it an essential part of a scene. It just the question is where you put that camera, and what you do with it, and how you move that camera. It's the life of a movie, because and that's why camera operators are very important, because they are the ones who are actually executing what you want.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go a little closer.
Oh, they are the ones, the camera operators, which really translate what as a director wants without him doing it, And it is a terribly important job. I think it's more important than the director of photography, because it's the operator's hand which is on the camera, and the camera is the one which records and makes that film physically happening. And the DP is terribly important, but he's doing it from here and lighting it, all those things, But it's from this direction. And when you're a camera operator, you are there within all of you, moving and doing and stuff. And it's that's why it is never a one person thing actually making a movie, because it is several very important jobs, contributions, which makes it so wonderful and unbelievable. And I love, and that camera is alive, And years ago, Panavision used to write of what films were made on that particular camera. And for me, always was and is that whatever camera it is, whether it's Mitchell or whether it's electronic, it doesn't matter, but it's alive, and a director has this incredible connection with it, because they are translating and recording your thoughts, and you are watching the result of it as you're going along, and it is magic, absolute magic.
I think we have time. Oh.
Just a question, Peter, about those fights you had with producers.
That what?
The fights you might have had with a producer or two about those camera angles, or trying to shoot and getting into those areas to do some of those shots. Did you fight ever with a producer or with the production about any of the shots?
Ever doing what?
Oh, she's asking if you ever fought with the producer to get those type of shots that were out of the ordinary, kind of adding to what you just asked. Did you ever have like a conflict with the producer where they were saying, we want this to be more conventional and not as creative?
No, I know, but no, that would have been a terrible fight, and I was still doing it. I mean, I would have done it. I would have done it, because they don't know what you are seeing and what you actually want. And then they see it at the dailies in the theater, and then they appreciate it, understanding. But they don't know whoever it is, whether it was Sam Spiegel or whoever, of what you're trying to do. And you just have to do it. And producers don't like it, at all, but it's so what, you just do it, and that's it.
I think we have time for one more question. Go. Peter.
But you haven't mentioned the cutting room and your relationship with the editors, because they have your whole vision now in front of them at their fingertips. So maybe talk a little bit about your relationship with the editor, because now you're one-on-one creating your final vision.
Yeah, it's. I was very fortunate enough to work with some of the greatest editors around, which is still alive, Walter Murch, and or Lou Lombardo, who did the Magnificent Seven and a lot of Sam Peckinpah's movie, and he and I worked great, but it is, you have to be in the cutting room, and you can't just leave it to them and then do something else and then come back 3 days later when the scene is cut, because it will not be cut the way you want it, because it's the same as the shooting. You have to shoot exactly what you want to see and what you want to shoot. And I had really wonderful editors in right from the beginning, and it's a very close relationship, and you have to be there all the time. You can't just do this and I'll be back in 5 minutes. You can't do that. You have to be there every second.
It's so collaborative.
Yeah. And again, they're the ones who do the hard work. When we used to film on celluloid, and you need that time to think of how you're gonna go on to the next thing. And I'm sure if you ask the same question from Scorsese or Spielberg or those directors who are very, very sensitive to great editors, And Scorsese used Selma, on every film of his, And I tried, to use the same DP in my first 3 movies, which was negatives, and they ended us of Joag and The Changeling, and it went for a small-sized movie, and it doesn't matter what the budget is, and how it is what you do and how you do it, and it's a collaborative effort, and you have to be there at every stage of it, and they are wonderful people, editors, and you drive them crazy to take it out and take it apart again and stick it together, when it was on film, and film was sensational, much better than the video, because with the video you can do everything, but it is too fast. It was too fast at the beginning, particularly, and you could only watch about 3 shots cut together, and then you progressed on, and when you're making a film on film, you put it on that moviola and it rattles on, but it is again the perfect way to edit a film, and
It really makes the difference.
a tremendous difference. And it's very funny because Walter Murch, he doesn't like editing sitting down. He has to sit up. And then whether it was the Steinbeck machine or whatever, but he has to put his entire body into that cut, which he does, and they could do electronically too, and he's a genius,
But you might want to go a little closer because you faded out.
Was it?
Bring it closer. It faded out.
Oh yeah, no, I said Walter Murch is a genius of editing, and sound mixing, and I had an argument with the producers who then, against my wishes, replaced my editor. And then I worked with Lou Lombardo. And there was every reason to hate each other because of how we were forced together. And the same thing happened on Romeo's Bleeding. Romeo's Bleeding, because it was, I just forgotten the name of the editor, or Romeo's Bleeding, but yeah, it doesn't matter. But it's I've forgotten what I was going to say, so it doesn't matter, but
No, you're just saying about the two about being forced together, working with an editor. That
Yeah.
It was.
oh yeah,
It was,
yeah, and it again, I think it was Lou Lombardo who came on to edit, to change the name.
Bless you.
And,
But it really makes.
no, I remember now what Walter Murch. Walter, and that we cut on a Steinbeck machine, but the film goes in a spool, this way and that way, and so, and you're watching it on a screen like that. And Walter built a whole kind of audience in front of that screen, and he had two little figures on the side of the thing, and so he had to do it that way, and he was really cutting it for himself, but for those two little figures as well. And Walter has written a couple of books about editing, and they're absolutely just magical, and had the most incredible time with Walter, Murch, with Lou Lombardo, with the very first editor the editor who cut my very first movie in England, and they're equally great, all of them, but you have to get them to do what you want to do.
No, that's totally understandable.
And it's wonderful. And the editing goes on electronically, which is great because you can do a cut very quickly and look at it, which you had to wait sometimes a week before it came back from the lab and you could see it. But you needed that knowledge, you need to know actually what the fuck you are doing with it all,
No, I totally understand. We actually have to cut, and I hate to cut you short because this is such a wonderful conversation, and your knowledge and just hearing all these wonderful, your history as far as, everything that you've done. Nick Tate's going to be coming on. In fact, Nick is going to be coming on right now.
Yes.
So, Peter, let's everybody please give a warm welcome to Peter Medak.